Welcome to my latest animal welfare documentary. Now, this topic is an incredibly sad one. I've seen some shocking footage actually. And we'll be exploring the dog and cat meat trade across the globe. Every year, millions of dogs and cats are either bred or stolen for the purpose of being eaten. I've seen footage of puppies being boiled alive and then sold on wet markets. And these animals are often in awful conditions. I recently had a Westminster Hall debate on this topic and also wrote some articles about it. So it's something I'm passionate about. I think in this day and age, this practice should not be allowed. So in this week's documentary, I'll be speaking to the Humane Society and Four Paws UK about their work on the ground, what they have seen, and what they think can be done to put a stop to this practice. So I hope you've got a strong stomach for some of the footage, which is so heartbreaking. And as an animal lover myself, it was very difficult to watch, but I think we all need to get behind to try and stop this practice.
Yes. I'm here with the fantastic Emily Wilson, who's from Four Paws UK.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm Emily Wilson. I'm Head of Programmes and Campaigns here at Four Paws UK. We're a global animal welfare charity with animal sanctuaries on all continents apart from Antarctica, and essentially all about trying to help animals that are basically impacted by humans. So whether it be farm animals, wild animals, or those that we consider our pets and part of our family. We have a big team out in Southeast Asia at the moment trying to combat this trade. We were originally out there for stray animal care work in terms of mass neutering, rabies prevention, but we started noticing this problem of all these vaccinated dogs that we were treating and then re-releasing back out into the community, because they're more community animals than they are conventional pets. They essentially were just being scooped up almost on the day that you've just done the treatment and put into the food industry, which is terrible. And it is a really barbaric practice from sort of capture to end, and generally just horrible visually. But essentially, these numbers are in the millions. And although there have been arguments around culture and that, who are we to sort of say you shouldn't do this, there is this huge growing trend of having pets in Southeast Asia. And actually, the majority of the people in these countries, the citizens, don't want this either. It's a niche that's happening. It came out of poverty following World War II. And it's just something that's, something to have with a beer after work, kind of like a jerky, and it's just not even that necessary. It's easily something we could stop in its tracks now. So we are working really hard on this, particularly in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia, and we are seeing some really great results. Just recently, Siam Reap, the whole district of Siam Reap in Cambodia, had said they want to ban dog and cat meat trade, and they've started enforcing that. And we've been on the ground helping owners of slaughterhouses shut down and transition into alternative livelihoods, because it isn't about just stopping it and trying to rescue one dog at a time. It's really about trying to change these industries from in the inside. And we've had some wonderful responses, people in tears, they hate what they do. They were just doing it to feed their family and their community. And they're just so happy to be able to get out of this and either set up their own shop or go and have a rice paddy somewhere, which we've helped some people achieve. So it's fantastic to see, and we have seen some dogs adopted into our over into the US and have lovely, happy families now that they get to live with, which is great to see. But obviously, we can't adopt millions, and it's really hard to try and get to those numbers. We do need to really see these national bans. But one of the big connections to the pandemic here actually is that dogs and cats can carry these zoonotic diseases too. If a dog has rabies and you consume that meat, you can still get rabies from that meat. So it is a national health issue for those citizens. So have a think about the things you can do. We've got lots of advice on our website. Please sign our petitions, and any questions, just find everything on our website, which is www.fourpaws.org.uk.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you again on behalf of all animal lovers for what you're doing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me.
Hi, I'm here with Lola Webber from the Humane Society International. Hi, Lola. I understand that you're in the beautiful island of Bali.
Yes, I am very fortunate to be in lockdown number 2 here in Bali. There are worse places it could be.
Absolutely. I've seen some footage of the dog and cat meat trades, and it's quite horrific and it leaves a lasting impression, but you've been there on the ground. Could you tell us about your experience on the ground and what you've seen, and I guess how it made you feel?
First time I went, I tried to prepare myself. I would look at as much footage as I could find on the internet, read about it, study about it as much as I could to try and prepare myself. But the very first time I ever went to a dog meat market was at Moran Market, which at the time was South Korea's biggest dog meat market. And it was something that I don't think you could ever prepare yourself for. You know, it's the smells, it's the sounds, it's incredibly overwhelming. Since then, obviously, having visited markets in other countries, but also dog meat farms in South Korea. So that's where South Korea is very unique in that it has these dog meat farms, which are essentially intensive farming facilities that can house up to thousands of dogs that are solely being bred and raised in preparation for slaughter. And again, you go to these places, and I always kind of note that people often say, you know, how do you go to these places? You know, because obviously I do what I do, and my colleagues do what they do because we care so much. And so it's kind of like, how do you go? And I always think, you know, going there is almost the easy part. It's always when you have to walk away that makes it so difficult.
Gosh,
you know, you've got so many, you know, peering eyes looking at you, and
you want to rescue them all, don't you? I imagine.
of course. And you know,
Yes.
we do what we do because we care. And you know, it never gets any easier being in a position where you can't do anything there and then save them.
I understand, Lola, you've been involved in trying to close down some of these dog meat farms as well. What kind of response did you get from the local people and how did you approach them, really?
Yeah, so the idea of working with, so like I mentioned, dog meat farms are unique to South Korea. So in our campaign there in South Korea, the idea of working with the industry came from visiting countless dog meat farmers. What I kept realizing is every time we met these farmers, they would all say, you know, I'm ready to leave. I don't want to do this anymore. And a lot of the times they would cite remorse towards the dogs. You know, they often had their own pet dogs. So in the end, we came up with a concept of, you know, we kind of call it the Models for Change concept, whereby we can actually work with the industry. The Models for Change program essentially enables us to help them transition. So the process works by meeting farmers who are looking to leave the industry. We spend a lot of time trying to find out, you know, what it is they want to do instead, what different opportunities there are, and how we can facilitate their transition into a humane alternative livelihood. And what's more is then the farmers who we work with go on to be wonderful spokespeople for us. You know, kind of they add to our voice for calling for change. You know, it's time to move on from the dog meat industry in South Korea. You know, it's not an industry that anyone wants to be part of. And then also the dogs that we're able to rescue go on to be the most incredible ambassadors, or ambassadors as we call them, you know, for our campaign. Because a big issue that we come across in South Korea is this notion that there are two types of dogs. There are meat dogs and there are pet dogs. And this is a problem that, you know, we kind of hear over and over again with as a defense of the industry, saying we would only ever farm and slaughter meat dogs. And they have two particular breeds of dogs that they want to categorize as meat dogs. And so obviously when we're able to rescue these dogs and send them to their new homes, and we can share those images and those kind of visuals and the stories that, you know,
It's
these
very
dogs
powerful, isn't it? Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, and you know, these dogs are, you know, it sounds so obvious, but you know, you kind of, it is still striking to see when you see the kind of the Tosas and the Jindo crosses, which are categorized as these meat dogs, living their best lives on people's couches, you know, going to the beach, you know, doing all the things that dogs, you know, love to do.
Yes.
And you know, and they've really, you know, they're changing people's minds, and you know, they become these real incredible ambassadors for us.
Thank you, Lola. And it must be such a powerful statement for people whose own dog meat farms to actually then go out and be on your side and you know, discussing the reasons not to do it and see these animals go on to the life they should be leading, really. So Humane Society International have closed down a number of dog meat farms in South Korea. Like you said, it's very unique to South Korea. dogs being bred for food. How many have they actually closed down, and how long does the process take? Because I can imagine it takes quite a while to get from first, meeting with the farm to actually closing it down and help them have their new lives.
Yeah, so we've now closed down 17 dog meat farms. We've assisted with a number of others with local organisations and also with the market and slaughterhouse closures. But HSI have closed down 17 dog meat farms so far in South Korea, and they've ranged in size significantly, and obviously that kind of changes how long the process takes. Once we've identified a farm and we've identified a transition plan for the farmer we're working with, the first step really is to get a contract signed. So it's a legally binding contract that we get the farmers to sign, with a number of stipulations, including that they can never again, of course, be involved in the dog meat industry in any shape or form. So what we actually do is we vaccinate the dogs on the dog meat farm, and we quarantine them on the dog meat farm. So we need 30 days between the vaccination and before they're allowed to fly. So obviously it's very sad in many ways having to kind of keep the dogs in these dog meat farms, because it's very sad conditions. It's very, very difficult. But at the same time, once they're under our ownership and guardianship, we can make sure that they do receive vet care if any of the dogs are sick. And when you see how they survive these farms and how they come off, leave the farms and they learn to live life again.
Well, thank you, Lola. It's truly inspiring what you do. So thank you on behalf of all furry friends across the globe. And thank you so much for your time, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much for helping us shine a light on this important issue.
Thank you. Marc, I'm doing an investigation about the dog meat trade. Now, I understand that in the last couple of years, you've actually been to South Korea and seen how horrific it is. Please, could you tell us about your experience?
Absolutely, Andrea. It was an incredible trip. I was fortunate enough to accompany HSI, Humane Society International, to go and witness the closing down of a dog meat farm. So we were based in Seoul in South Korea. And then what we found were sort of very ramshackle, rusty rows of kennels stuffed with usually 1, 2 or 3 dogs, often cowering, often showing signs of aggression, often circling, lots of cobwebs, very unkempt, sort of horrible place, quite sinister place. And HSI, the charity, had done a deal, which is how they close these places down. They've done a deal with the dog meat farmer, which is basically kind of buying them out and making them sign a legal contract so they can't do it again, giving them an opportunity, really putting a positive spin on it to diversify and do something completely unrelated, which is the trend at the moment. It was a fascinating trip, obviously. It was incredibly depressing. It was obviously quite a positive outcome for this farm. We did visit a farm that wasn't being closed down yet because negotiations hadn't started yet. And that was particularly disturbing because you're seeing dogs that you know are going to die. You're witnessing the area where they're electrocuted and butchered.
Oh, God.
And that is in full view of the others. It's probably one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen.
It's truly heartbreaking hearing you talk like this.
It was horrible. Yeah, it was horrible.
Especially in your position, you're there to save animals, and you've done that with hundreds of dogs over the years. That must have been even harder witnessing that.
I think the extra brutality and unfairness with dogs is really that there's a betrayal aspect as well, because I think dogs, they sniff cancer, they detect explosives, they help blind people, they help deaf people. Yeah. And I think when you have dogs that have only really been bred in certain ways to help humans, for the humans then to treat them so badly and to really, they torture them before they kill them because, it's widely believed that adds to the flavor. And I think that's animal cruelty, yes, but added to that is almost a betrayal to a species that we have developed to help us.
Yes, and thank you for what you do in this area and highlighting it, Marc. I hope you found this week's episode of Animals Matters interesting. Now, if you too would like to become a voice for those dogs and cats, as mentioned on this week's video, please write to your MP. Also, contact the charities that's been mentioned on this programme. They need your support. The animals need your support too. On next week's episode, we will be having our first session of Celebs with Their Pets, where I go behind the scenes and meet people in the public eye, talk about animal welfare, and also meet their pets. So please tune in next week. Thank you.